All right, William Roggie, welcome back.
Thank you.
Another two-timer. We got a few two-timers. We're just recycling all the good wisdom.
Is that it? Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Yeah, that's right.
Hopefully we'll hear some.
Here, I'll just put that close to you.
Oh, okay.
Nice and. So Nick is here. Welcome, Nick. Hi. I don't know why I keep saying welcome. Nick. This is your podcast. Anyways.
That's all right. Doesn't bother me.
You offended by that?
Not at all.
Okay, so about a month or two ago, this is my dad, for anybody who doesn't know. We were in Florida and happened to just kind of had one of those good late night talks, you know, like you often just randomly have in
Florida.
Then they end and Florida. No, not about Florida. No, just
I thought you said random late night talks that you often have in Florida.
Yeah, in Florida. Yeah, but only in Florida. And basically it centered around adventure and purpose and how to raise children to contend with the world and what that looks like.
Mostly we were talking about young men, young boys, and raising them for the adventure of life, or, you know, how do you raise them to draw out of the innate thing within them that is to be adventurous and to, be conquerors and, little warriors and that kind of thing. And builders, and just, cause I think that every man, young boy has that desire within them to be adventurous. And a funny story, last night I ran over to Nick's place to pick up a couple things, and Rocky, their 5-year-old, right? Rocky's 5, answered the door, and, "Hey, Grandpa," and he holds up, he's got a stick in his hands. He goes, "I got my gun." And here's a 5-year-old, right? That's like ready to go out and conquer something.
Yeah.
And it kind of hit me that, I think within every young man, every young male or older ones, that there is that built within us to be adventurous, to conquer and that kind of thing. We'll get into that a little bit more down the road here, but it was just so funny. He's just like, "Got my gun."
Yeah, like every little boy ever.
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like you could squander that somehow. Like a lot of cultural pressure has been kind of fighting against that in men for decades. Yeah. And I think now it feels to me that that's coming back around to saying, like, no, actually we need men to be industrious. We need men to lead in certain areas. We need men to be strong. We need men to be competent, to build, to seek adventure, and then to bring others along for the ride. And that is it's been under attack for a long time.
Yeah. Levi recently memorized a poem for like his school curriculum, and he's 7. And so I graded his school the other day, and I often am a little bit like removed from where he's at. And to me, it feels like every time I look at his stuff, it's been like a week or 2 or 3. But to me, in my mind, he's progressed years in just a little bit. I'm always surprised at how far he's gone in such a short amount of time. And he was like doing math in like addition and subtraction in like the thousands. And that like blew my mind. Yeah. And so anyway, but yeah, his schooling right now, so he's memorizing poems, which is like the same concept. Just like, I don't understand at 7 how he's doing that, but he's just growing up so fast. But Brielle had to memorize Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. Is that what it's called? Or The Road Less Taken?
The Road Less Traveled.
The Road Less Traveled. And like, so I knew he was doing it, and it's been a few weeks since he stopped because he had like kind of, I think, completed that. And obviously that poem is a lot of the same, like talks about a lot of the same themes that we're probably going to touch on tonight. And so I love that poem. I don't know it by heart, but whenever you hear it, like it's a great poem, and I hate poetry. So anyway, it's been weeks since he finished that part of his like literature lesson or whatever. And the other day at breakfast, I randomly asked him to recite it for me. And after 2 or 3 weeks of being done with it, he like rattled it off.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And it was like the most impressive thing to me. But like, yeah, I thought that was really cool. Like that my 7-year-old. And so I told him, I'm going to frame it and put it on his wall. And he like got a big old smile. That was like a big motivation for him. He wanted it, like he would like to memorize more poems.
Yeah.
If he could frame them and put them on his wall when he finished. Like that was like a reward to him.
Sure.
So he'll have that poem on his wall to look at and read. And that brings me to another thing is when we were doing flooring at the house that we were doing at last week, the young man's room that got floor in there, that his father had printed out or had gotten plaques of some really cool, like 4 like really cool poems.
Okay.
Or like a couple were poems and another was like a Teddy Roosevelt, which we'll go over later. And he had hung him on his kid's wall, and from the stuff in the kid's room, it looked like he was probably Levi's age. And he's got these like really cool in cursive, like what you would put in like a man's study in his boy's room. So that, and I thought that was really cool, like to put those on the wall so that his boy grows up reading those over and over and over again.
Sure.
And it's instilling something in him.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to steal that idea. And one of them was Teddy Roosevelt's,
The Man in the Arena.
The Man in the Arena. Yeah. Do you know that one?
Do not.
Can I read it?
No. Yeah.
Can I read it?
Please do.
Okay. It is not the critic who counts, nor not the man who points out how a strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually does strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And that was Teddy Roosevelt, I think in a bigger document that he wrote, that was an excerpt. And he was like man's man, obviously.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah. I just read that exact one yesterday afternoon in the book that you had mentioned.
Oh, really?
Wild at Heart, John Eldridge's book. That quote is in there.
No surprise.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah, like every man that listens to that is like, I'm gonna run through a wall.
Get you fired up.
Yeah, I'm fired up right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking about that a lot with like, I would like that to be the next thing that Levi memorizes. So he wants to memorize it and put it on his wall. And like he'll grow up, him and Rocky will grow up. Hopefully I remember as a kid having things on the wall and you just end up looking at them all the time because things become familiar in your room that you look at and you like, and maybe they'll keep them memorized would be great. But just always seeing that stuff as they grow up.
Can you think of a defining moment for you where you started thinking, I want to go after something. I want to, even if it was like Rocky, got his gun, he's going to go out hunting or whatever. You know, is there just a kind of was throughout your childhood or?
Yeah, I love to play outside in the woods. Like we'd go out in the woods and disappear for hours and hours and like just be boys and like climb trees and hit things with sticks and. Yeah, we love to do that as kids. Like,
but
best
like,
times.
Okay, so like brain chemistry and biologically speaking, what is that about? Like, why is it that? Was it something that was taught to you? No. Was it something that was played out for you and then you saw it and wanted to do it? No. Like, there's something in us.
There is. It's almost like a DNA built in us from creation, from being, created or whatever that. Same thing, I don't know. How about for you when, you grew up and you had 3 brothers and, you
actually my brothers are way older than me. So like we really didn't play in the woods with them.
Okay.
Because they were
you had Corwin.
6 and 8 years. I had cousins.
Cousins, yes.
Yeah, but like I don't ever remember playing in the woods with my older brother. So I wouldn't have seen them playing in the woods necessarily until I could remember. So Calder and I, my younger brother, we were in the woods all the time, all the time, in the mud, in the trees, in the tree house, playing all those same things.
Yeah, it is weird. It is interesting how like innate that is. Like my father worked, and like I didn't learn. He didn't tell me to go play out in the woods. I didn't learn that from watching him. Like my mom didn't tell me. Like we never had to be told to go do those things. Like we just did it on our own. Yeah. Like we walked outside one day and saw like a big forest, and that'd be fun. And like went out and did it, and it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting point that you make that there's something innate in, I don't know, maybe boys and girls. I don't know, but maybe it's children. I'm not sure. But there's certain things that you don't need to be taught. It's an innate sense of adventure and how to like carry that enthusiasm into adulthood in our pursuits.
I think with girls, it's the same thing. It's just maybe it looks a little different, but it's, they're building houses and they're raising children and, with their babies
Playing
and
house.
playing house
Yeah.
and,
Right.
and all of that. And so, I think there's something to feeding that in our children at a young age so that they can relate to it as they're entering the more influential years of their life, teen years and preteen years. And that way they have an identity. And I think to me, that's a huge thing that's missing in culture today is the identity that, these kids and young people just don't have a true identity of who they are, what they were created to be. Some of that comes, I think a lot of that comes from the lack of father involvement in the young men. We're talking mostly about boys tonight. Mm-hmm. I am anyways, but certainly would relate to motherhood and the girls. And as fathers, we have a huge role in our girls' lives as well. But it's interesting. It's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
I don't know that with children, raising children, I don't have boys, but raising children, if I would have thought about kind of the attacks on masculinity over the years in recent memory, it's so obvious that the lack of fathers in the home would be a significant contributor to that. Mm-hmm. But all you see is, the demonization from maybe a media source or social media or something like that, or a push from a certain cultural perspective. But it's probably very close to equally important.
Yeah, I think so for sure.
If you would say, okay, here's a good litmus test. If you were to say, okay, masculinity has been under attack for 30 years, let's just say, and then you say, what's the biggest contributor? I don't think that the first answer would be father's not in the home, because that's not really what you see. You don't see that on a day-to-day basis. Right. You can see all the news, you can see all the social media, and the truth of the matter is that it's certainly a huge factor.
Yeah, and I think for us, raising our children I felt somewhat removed from maybe like the culture outside of our area, because we had an amazing church family, at Rhema. We had very solid men. We had men that were strong and good leaders, and, they loved their wives, and it was important to them. Their family was important to them. And so I think we reaped the benefit of being around that a lot. And, so I think once you move outside of that sphere, mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't know, because I didn't really experience a lot of that. And I grew up in a very solid home. My dad was very present. He grew up in a home he was raised on a farm, so his dad was always there. As soon as he came home from school or wherever it was, his dad was there, and they worked together. And so I think that says a lot. I think in our society, there's such a push for success. Well, what is success? Is it getting that promotion? Is it climbing up the ladder? Is it at the expense of who and at the expense of what? And we get caught up in that. It's easy to get caught up in that, the corporate thing. But what's the payoff, and what does it cost? So, yeah, I'm very thankful for the upbringing that I had, and I'm equally thankful for watching my grandchildren being raised the way they're being raised. You guys are doing a great job. You're present with them, and all of my children, I think, are amazing parents, and I'm shouting hallelujah, because that's what I want to see, and I'm so thankful.
Thanks.
Thanks, man. It's funny that you maybe didn't understand, like, not that there was a cultural push in the 90s. I'm not when dial-up internet was You didn't have access to so much information. You're listening to like Walter Cronkite, and like he's not talking about these issues of toxic masculinity. It's more of a modern push, but I think that you're exactly right. When you can have that fatherly figure in the home that you see every day is so important. And the unfortunate truth is that for a lot of people, that's not the case.
Very true.
And something else has to fill that void, and something else does fill that void. Whatever that looks like. So it's kind of scary.
Yes.
Yeah. What is the outcome? Like, what are we talking about the outcome being of even, first of all, I want to go back. My father played with us in lots of ways. It wasn't just the woods thing was a specific example. One of the best memories I have as a kid, some of the best memories I have as kids is when my dad would come out and throw football with us. And that's a big thing is like fathers playing with their boys. Yeah. But my dad was like amazing football player. And so when he would come out and throw routes to us, it was like Peyton Manning was throwing to us. Like it was some of the best memories of my childhood.
Yeah,
and
still,
just like Superman. Like it's like you're playing football with Superman is what it was like. So yeah, just the woods thing was a specific example. I'm not not knocking my father at all.
Yeah.
He was great. Anyway, what is the outcome of like, even for homes that it's not like a fatherless home, but like maybe it is in a sense where maybe the father works too much or the father isn't really present. Like what would we consider? I often wonder, like, not to be too like brash, but like what's the outcome of that where you would think society has taken a bad turn? Is that when we get on social media and see men like not doing real meaningful work? Like to give my opinion. So we do a podcast, but we also have like jobs, like we it's not all we do. And I don't know where the line is personally, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's hard. Like if I get on a social media site or whatever, and like I see that some guy's like job is some kind of influencer thing. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but like how much value does that create for men as a whole in society? I don't know. I don't know. Like, what does it look like? What are we talking about when we look at like a man, like a society that lacks a certain level of masculinity? That isn't just a blatant, like, homes are fatherless. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are we really talking about? How could society be more masculine if there are fathers in the home, but, like, it's not good enough? If we're growing up and not doing meaningful work?
Yeah.
Because I see society heading a direction where in 50 years, more and more people are going to be doing not meaningful work. And I think that people can make the argument that like, okay, this is probably not going to, yeah. I think people will try to make the argument that a lot of that is meaningful work and that people need stuff like that. It's uplifting and this and that. And I think that's a load of crap. I do. I think that if we look at the kind of jobs that men fulfilled 100 years ago, I think that is more meaningful work than a lot of the jobs that men fulfill nowadays. Like building skyscrapers, going off to war. Like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I just don't know how uplifting. I don't know how uplifting equals meaningful when it comes to like things that we see on the internet. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion. But
you're canceled.
Yeah, that would be like I can see a lot of people making an argument that it is meaningful, and I tend to.
It's hard to know.
I tend to disagree.
Yeah, meaningful is pretty subjective. Yeah. Pretty subjective word.
Yeah, I tend to disagree. But
yeah, I guess. I mean,
so like society is heading that way, where like more and more men are leaving the meaningful industry, and
what would be a meaningful industry?
That's what I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like.
It gets hard.
It's like like going to work every day and providing for your family. Well, like, I mean, a lot of, there are so many ways to do that nowadays that do not look traditional. And so I don't know. I don't know where the line is like between traditional and like what's acceptable and traditional and what's more modern, but like not as outwardly masculine. And I don't know. That's what I'm asking. It's a touchy subject, but
Got an answer for that one, Dad?
I do not.
I just think that
Me either.
there are tons. Okay, here's what I'm trying to say. There are tons of homes that are not fatherless, yet our society is like heading in a non-masculine direction. But like there are fathers in homes still. Like why are we headed? Like are the fathers not doing a good job raising their boys to place importance in important things? Is it a lack of God? Yeah, it's even though we have many fathers in many homes, the epidemic is not completely taken over. Like we still have like the nuclear family, I think, still reigns in America. Yet we see our society heading still in a downward direction as far as masculinity goes. And why is that? That's kind of what I'm wondering. Is it the internet? Is it?
Yeah. How much of that would be our perception being influenced by media and social media and that kind of thing? Because you're right. I mean, the nuclear family is very strong, and I think we get inundated with all of this negative stuff that overweighs the good and the positive. And so, yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up in that. It's easy to follow some of those things, and man, you can find yourself discouraged and disarrayed by following that and watching it, when the truth is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Raising your boys, like to have a zeal for life and to pursue things that are, I would say, that are meaningful with passion. Well, what is meaningful?
And what is passion? I think we all have our own definition of what we think passion might be, or what can we do that would exemplify passion in our lives. Well, for some it might be, building a new computer program that benefits a corporation or a company. For others, it might be construction, building. For others, it might be just being a public servant in some way, so.
Yeah.
Is it because that our perception of masculinity has to be something more macho, something more hands-on? Is that it? Because, I guess my interpretation of, I know lots of people who I would say are masculine men who are accountants behind a desk.
Right.
Right. Or it's not so much outwardly what you do, but kind of who you are internally. And it just feels like such a weird word. Like even when you use the word masculinity, it's like, well, what does that mean? What does it look like? And then how can we help manifest the good parts of that? Because there's definitely bad parts of it in our kids, in a generation, in our community. Because you're right, 1 in 4, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, grow up in a fatherless home. And those numbers, too, are a little bit interesting, because I have seen an in-depth analysis that talks about father in the home doesn't mean there's not a father present, somewhat. So visitation rights and, has them on the weekends, or still has a relationship with the mother, but not living in the home. Some of the data is a little bit skewed there. So it's like 17.6 million children in the U.S., which if you look at it and say, it says here, it's enough to fill New York City twice or Los Angeles 4 times, which, like, if you look at it like that, you're like, wow. But then you think like 360 million people, 350, whatever the number is, 1 in 4 shouldn't be like the reason why we're saying there's masculinity crisis.
Right.
Because there must be something more as a population generally.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, and part of the mix up of it could be that what looks like masculinity today probably didn't 50 years ago, or 50 years ago to today. It's probably 2 different looks, Yeah. We think of guys like I just watched a series called Sons of Liberty. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, but it's kind of back at the dawn of the Revolutionary War. And I mean, these guys were crazy, and they had a drive to defeat the English army.
which is crazy to wrap your head around.
It's crazy because here they are. They're marching towards guns, firing at them, knowing that most of them are not going to go back home. And, and so is that like a preconceived idea of masculinity, like Braveheart and some of these movies where, they're just wild going for it.
Right.
And where today, we don't have to do that. And so
maybe it's
we identify with masculinity to what it was versus,
definitely not
what it is today.
Right.
Right.
I think totally not.
Right.
And so maybe we're talking about a completely different masculinity, even to, 100 years ago or 50 years ago, whenever like skyscrapers are being built. Like there's videos of guys working on oil rigs right now. And you look at that and you're like, that's the same thing. Like that is insane. Or guys, in the military now, it's a different age for sure. But in some places it's not that different. Right. I just think that we have a curtain, like a background of what we think the past looks like through movies and through experience and history.
Sure. That
is actually legitimate. That's completely different from the call to masculinity today.
It's clouding our perception.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Yeah, because when I think about that, or even World War II, we got to put those guys in there. Go watch Midway sometime, and just the representation of dive bombers, pilots. These guys are in their early 20s, literally just dropping straight down at an aircraft carrier, and at the last second, if they make it that far, because their buddies are taking flak all next to them. And then they happen to get it. Well, then they've got to, get out. And it's just like, how do you look at life? So it's just the way it needs to be done. Like this just has to be done. We're going to go and do it. Life through history has been less, I'm not saying less valuable. That's not what I mean, but less precious in a sense that
earned.
Yeah. Just in a sense that, if you guys are going to go on a wagon train out to Oregon, you're probably going to lose some children. You're probably going to lose some family members. And it was just known in the back of the head that, hey, look, death is something we deal with. It comes at any time. And it just seems like nowadays that stuff doesn't happen. So we hold our children so precious, and we're having less children. And they're so much more precious to us that when you lose one, it's like the world is over. And if you look back at history, that's just not. It wasn't the reality.
Yeah. The reality was, if you got on a wagon train from the East Coast to go to the West Coast, you were pretty much a different family by the time you got there.
Yeah. And we don't relate to that anymore.
Right.
I think that modern masculinity, I don't know how much. So yeah, I feel like the way that it's interesting how we look back on the past and like the idea of past masculinity is like
these guys were tough,
macho, like a physical,
tough,
like a
because
macho.
They were,
they were, no doubt.
Those who survived anyway,
right. And they would look. This is genuinely how I feel, but like now, like modern masculinity, which I wonder if it was if this specific way of being was lacking in past masculinity, but like I truly believe that. As far as being a father goes, is loving your children, and for boys specifically, just talking about raising boys, your actions speak louder than words. And so how you behave in the experiences that your children have through your actions, how they observe your actions rather, what it looks like a masculine person, man would be gentle, just, kind, soft-spoken, slow to anger, all that like counterintuitive stuff. And I wonder like that, I truly believe that is a huge portion of what it means to be masculine. I don't know if I should call it modern masculinity, but I think I call it that because I wonder 100 years ago what they would think about if that is how men thought back then too about how they should behave around their boys.
Yep.
But I believe it's true. Like I I've seen people around me who raise boys, and I've learned from people around me, and I can see I've learned the value of, gentleness, slow to anger, kindness, and there is an inherent masculinity, that self-control. Like there's
sometimes
a control
it takes
to that.
more masculinity to respond that way than it does to just fly off the handle and be angry and just respond.
That would be
out
the
of that.
toxic part. Like that's what gets painted. It's the abusive, over aggressive,
disciplinary kind of stuff. Yeah,
over disciplinarian, not emotionally capable, not emotionally aware. Like those are all things that maybe rightfully so even have been pushed back against, maybe too far. And now the pendulum swing is becoming like there's got to be a middle sweet spot before the Andrew Tates of the world and stuff like that come back with their warped sense of what masculinity is, and then you have all of these kids being raised up to think that that's what a man should be. And
like maybe we idolize that style. Like that is taking because people like that preach that this is how it used to be, and I don't know that that's true. That's an exaggeration of what it used to be in order to make good content.
Right.
And I think that maybe we do idolize. I wonder if we idolize men from the past, and maybe they were more gentle and kind and loving and had self-control in the way that they at least maybe fathered their boys. But maybe not. Maybe our generations move towards gentle fathering and self-control and slow to anger. Maybe, I don't know. I'm wondering if I believe that is the right way to father boys. But is our generation as a whole doing that? And that's what's contributing to the problem. And we need to be more like the guys the men back in the day that we tend to idolize, who we think of as less sensitive. I don't know. I don't think so. But I'm just wondering, I'm pondering.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Nick. I think that especially younger children growing up, they need to know a few things, and they need to know that, first of all, that they are loved. Mm-hmm. Secondly, that they're safe. Mm-hmm. Thirdly, that you approve of them. That's a huge thing. And I think, when you don't feel that sense of approval, you're going to look for it somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's where maybe you get involved in drugs, or maybe you get involved with the wrong girl or whatever.
Gangs.
Get involved in gangs because you're looking to be approved by your father. For us as men sitting here, I wanted my father's approval, and I wanted to know that, that I was pleasing to him. And it's the same with, we want God to feel that we're pleasing to him. We want to feel pleasing to him as well. And that's where I think that, that innate stuff is like a DNA in our system, because it's there. I don't care who you are and where you were raised and how you were raised. That's within us. And there's that sense of wanting affirmation and wanting approval and wanting the adventure. It's there. Mm-hmm. And, we can judge, I've been guilty of judging people thinking, they just are really messed up or whatever. And then when you actually talk to them, they'll start sharing things and they feel pretty much the same way I do, as far as wanting to conquer something and wanting to, kill the hunt and that kind of thing. So it's there. It's just a matter of, is it going to be encouraged or is it going to be squashed? Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I always tried to encourage that, to allow the boys and the girls to be able to express themselves and give them space. And sometimes even when you think, boy, this is going to be a hard lesson for them, but sometimes you have to let them learn that lesson, but you're there. You're there for them. They can come back to you. And, sometimes you got to learn through school of hard knocks And, and that's hard as a parent, a father or a mother, to be able to just step back and not want to just save them from making that, that turn or that mistake and stuff. Not that we did everything right, because, Dawn, I've often said, in spite of us, our kids have turned out pretty good. We're very proud of them. And because it's easy to look at the times where we should have done this a little differently, or we should have done that a little differently. But for the most part, we gave some rope. We gave some leniency. But they knew they were in a safe place.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very important.
What's interesting is like that reminds me of like we read, probably will read again, the Little House on the Prairie series with our boys. That was like a thing we went through for a couple of years, I guess, or a year. We just read through all the books with Levi and Roggie. It was a little young. Levi mostly was the one absorbing it. But like when I think that was a long time ago, that was like, like in the late 1800s or whatever, I think. Mm-hmm. No, maybe, I don't know. I'm going to butcher this.
I'll find it.
Long enough ago that it kind of hit, like the father, Pa, everybody knows Pa, kind of fits into that category of like back then, a man back then. And if anybody who's read the books or watched the show, I guess, he's like that gentle father who, but like of course he had girls. But anyway, what I'm getting to is that the earlier books, there's the story of like Almanzo. He's like somebody who knows the I don't know their last names, but the people who are the main characters, Laura, and her family,
Ingalls?
they have, Laura Ingalls. Yeah, Ingalls. Like Almanzo, there's a book about a boy named Almanzo, and like they're friends and they meet at some point in the books, but some of the books are like, there's a kid named Almanzo. So there's a boy and a father, and there's a particular part in that where they're like loggers. They're like some kind of loggers. They some of the season they go out and they log for money. And Almanzo like gets to an age where he gets to drive one of the sleds that brings the logs back and forth, brings the logs to the farm, and then he drives the sled with the 2 cows or oxen back to Paul and the guys in the woods and reloads it. And so he's the driver back and forth, and it's like this huge responsibility. Yeah. And I think he's like 12 in the book. But I remember like at one point, he's like, he wants to make his dad so proud. Like he finally got the responsibility to drive the oxen and haul the logs back and forth. And like, I think that his father, like at some point, it's very clear in the book, his father's like, you ready for this? Be careful, do a good job. You know how to drive your horses. I think they're horses. You know how to drive the horses. It's usually in snow. So like there's a risk of getting stuck or mud or whatever. So he at one point like turns the sled over. And if I remember correctly, the way the book writes it is he's not like, oh no, my dad is going to be so mad at me. Like I need to hide this. What have I done? Like I've let everyone down. It's like the entire experience is describing his struggle to see, like he knows like where it's going and he's struggling to keep it from happening. The perspective is from his perspective. And it's like, I need to conquer this. Like the trust is in my hands. It's my responsibility. He's 12. Yeah. And this is like supposedly a true story. Like this is all true stuff. And he's like a grown up driving it, it starts to go off the rails. And instead of like panicking and I'm going to let everyone down and this and that, it's like, how do I keep the ship upright? And he doesn't. Like it turns over, I believe, and they have to come help him out. And like there's no condemnation on the part of his father. His father's like, all right, get it back up and keep going. And that is like, as you're talking, that's like huge. Giving the rope. Yeah. And I'm thinking about that and how we have to know when it's the right time to give our boys responsibility and let them achieve. Often I think it's probably younger than you think. But that, and also like when they fail, how you respond to it and receive them when they come to you, will make or break that sense of adventure and conquering that we're talking about. But it starts with, this idea like starts with giving them rope and giving them responsibility. Kids like drive on the farm really early, like stuff like that. Like you teach your kids and give them responsibility at a young age and you work them and you give them that confidence. And then when they inevitably like fail, like how you as a father respond to them, is a big, factor in how
for
they
sure.
go forward in life and with their confidence and their ability to conquer things and keep that sense of adventure. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah. I remember there's been multiple times, even in my adult life, where we have made a decision, like Dawn and I have made a decision, and my first thought that came through my mind was, I wonder how Dad's going to respond to this. And it was kind of interesting because each time the initial response was not disapproval, but like, I don't know, nobody's ever done that. Because we started talking about homeschooling our kids. Well, we were the first ones in the Lowell School District to homeschool, so nobody really knew anything about it. And so we told our parents, and that was kind of the initial reaction was, are you sure this is something you want to do or whatever? And then there was a few other things that happened. We decided to start Rhema Fellowship, a new church with 4 other couples, and it was the same kind of thing, and it ended up that went well, was successful, and then I was going to start my business, and you have a good job, you might want to keep your job, and that kind of thing, and we decided to start our business, and that the Lord blessed that, it went well. Well, then we decided to put up our building, our new building. Boy, that's a pretty big investment. I don't know, and so all these things are, they're seated in the back of your mind, right? Well, then when we bought the cafe building, that was another thing, that's an awful big risk, and now to just speak to each one of those issues, it ended up that they were our biggest supporters. Mm-hmm. They really were our biggest supporters. And I knew as we progressed through each thing that they would be there, And so it's just interesting that when these things came up, how the response was over the years, it kind of influenced you a little bit in the decision process, even though we knew it's what we were going to do or wanted to do. I wanted their approval. Like I wanted their approval the first time we told them.
Yeah, right.
But it having to understand too that, Dad grew up the end of the Depression. You had a job, you kept your job, and those kinds of things. And so
it's much more generational.
Very much. Yeah. Now, nowadays it's people have, I don't know how many different jobs somebody would have over the course of 40 years. They might have 8-10 different jobs, just because there's opportunity and that kind of thing. But, the adventure part of it to me is something I always loved. I always said, about every 5 years I need to have something to do. Mm-hmm. And when we look back at some of this stuff, it was almost every 5 to 6 years, 7 years that we did something. So we're, speaking of adventure, Don and I are listening to A Walk Through the Woods. It's about a guy that walked the Appalachian Trail. And man, when I hear him, I'm like, I want to walk the Appalachian Trail. It'd be so fun. It'd be so this and that. And then I look at my physical situation, and, and stuff he talks about. I'm like, maybe I just really enjoy more thinking about the adventure than actually taking the adventure.
Yeah. Yep.
My idea of adventure was, I want to be the batter when we're down by 2 runs with the bases loaded and there's 2 outs, and that's the adventure I want. Put me in, coach. I want to see what I can do.
So you were that. You were that for many years.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't really go away, even if you satisfy. And like you were that pretty successfully, right? Like I would, right, Brock?
Definitely.
Yeah. So like even if you pursued it. You pursued what your, like how God put adventure in you was like sports and softball or baseball or whatever. Yeah. And you did it well, and still like on the other end of it, there's still something in you that when you hear those stories, there's like a fire in there.
Yeah.
Like there's no quenching it. Yeah. Even if you do it and do it well. Yeah.
For sure.
And I would even argue that when you do try to, quench it or at least squash it to some degree, then your life starts to kind of trail off.
Go off.
And
Because
like,
you lose that sense. And it's what we were talking about in Florida was if you're a 20-year-old young man and you have no direction and nothing that you're working towards and no adventure, if you want to call it that, you can very quickly become unfocused and just kind of going through life, and life is happening to you instead of you happening to life. And and probably you both at some point in time in your young lives have felt, I need some direction. I need to get on a path where I have some, something to fight for and something to work towards. And, I think that's a huge thing for young people, young men and women and girls.
I don't know that I still don't wake up in the morning and feel that way. Mm-hmm. Even, I think there's always something in us that we could be doing better. Like, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there are more complacent individuals, if that's the right word, but like, I still wake up and question and wonder, am I doing everything that I can to maximize whatever it is that God puts in us to want to maximize? Like, I feel like we've got decent direction, and I still think about it.
It's always like there's a carrot just out there, and
yeah.
I want to go for it. I want to get that, Yeah, it's very true. I'm never gonna. I mean, I might someday drive near Albany and walk for a couple of hours on the Appalachian Trail just so I can say I did walk on it. That would be really cool. But I think all of us have to have that drive for something that's just a little bit beyond us. I think that's what gives us vitality in life, for sure.
Yeah. Often there's something too, like sometimes people want to know that there's a soft landing before they take a leap. And that's our boys, that's our children. And what you were saying about your parents, being your biggest supporters, after you would decide to pursue things. Yeah. I guess it's really important that your children know, your boys or whatever, know that you have their backs no matter what. And to cultivate that in them through your actions and your words as you raise them, to constantly be whispering in their ear, that they have a soft spot to land, they have a soft place to land, and that they shouldn't be afraid to pursue
for sure
what we're discussing. And maybe I wonder how many fatherless homes or father presentless homes aren't whispering that in their young men's ears, and those young men don't grow up being unafraid to take a leap because they don't have a soft place to land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, notwithstanding their value, like go make a mistake. It doesn't diminish your value to us.
Right.
That is so true. And if you don't have that to fall back on, then your fear of failure might drive you to a ditch.
Yeah.
I would feel like
two words that are very harmful to me are what if. What if I try this and it doesn't work? Or what if I, fail at this? Or what if what if the stock market crashes? Or what, who knows? But that what if statement can really determine and deter you from the other side of the what if. Well, what if you take this risk and it works? What if you decide to hike the Appalachian Trail and you make it from Georgia to Maine, or whatever? And so I always want to encourage young men, pursue something, go after something, and take the adventure, because if you don't, you're going to wind up living a life of a hermit.
Mm-hmm. If you are lacking some of these things, like don't have the support system, don't have the encouragement, don't have the training really in a lot of ways, then you could see easily how you would be adrift and aimless, and then how that leads to just what is the quote, Nick? Quiet desperation.
Yeah. Yeah, living lives of quiet desperation.
Oh wow,
That's a hard one to. That's a hard one to swallow.
That's a great quote.
And I think that when you've got these pieces missing, that's when you get that, because you feel so desperate that you're not moving, that you're not attaining, you're not achieving. You have no goals. You have no, and how that lends so quickly then to depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. It leads to a cold and timid soul that knows neither victory nor defeat.
Yes.
Yeah. Like when you take the leap and you do things, even if you fail, there is a sense of triumph in trying. And that's,
That's probably the most important part of that.
Yep.
That whole quote.
John Maxwell calls it failing forward.
Failing forward.
So you fail, but you move forward, and that's, I've always remembered that quote. Just really good. I remember, Brock, one point in time when you were renting Mom and Dad's apartment upstairs in their house, and we had a conversation, and you just felt like, I think your exact words were, I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels, going nowhere. And I think part of that was, God was preparing you to maybe be pushed out or get out of your comfort zone. Well, it wasn't long after that. And where were you? You were staring at a brick in a wall in a gym, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But, so there are those times where we probably need that for, maybe for God to be able to focus us or to turn our attention from the situation we're in to looking beyond that.
And that's a great example of having that support system already and feeling like I didn't feel like I could let you guys down, although I wanted to make you proud. But I was certainly in that space. And maybe it's why I'm so passionate about this for like young men, is that like I know the feeling. I know how how desperate it is and how much despair there is. And it felt exactly like that quote. It felt like I was desperate and there was nothing happening. It was just quiet nothingness. And I wasn't going anywhere. And when you can feel so purposeless, it would have been easy to take other paths and not, if I wouldn't have been looking for what was next. And actually, what was next was looking for me, which is weird because that's kind of opposite of what we're talking about. An opportunity came to me, but I had to say yes, and I almost said no.
Right.
Like I was very hesitant. I even went through the first step and then was still hesitant after. And really it was the quiet desperation was kind of pushing me to like, what else then? Nothing. There's nothing else. And then, then you get kind of pushed into purpose overload. Moving out of state, moving to a state where you have no friends, no support system, not directly there. Just a really tough situation. Different situation, very hard, very exhaustive, and it changed my life.
It did.
Changed my life.
And it was, from the father perspective, it wasn't easy to watch, but I knew that you had to go through it and that the fruit from it would be very, very good. And it was. And I think that you learned a lot of things that would have taken years and years and years to learn otherwise, perhaps. But, for me to hear what you went through during that day, I'm like, oh man, we got to do something here. In fact, I think Grandma and Grandpa came down when you got pepper sprayed.
Yeah, Grandma and Grandpa's there.
Because I don't know why we couldn't make it, but it's like, you just want to be there. You want to be there to show that support.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't have been able to see you very good.
Yeah. I think Grandma said you spent most of the time like in the shower.
Yeah, trying to get the pepper out of my face. That's a good place to lead then. Just so you know, it's 2,200 miles, the Appalachian Trail, through 14 states.
Up and down, back and forth.
Yeah, I would love to know the miles, because it is so up and down, like what the true
like the actual walking distance.
Yeah.
That is a great question. I will find that out for you.
With elevation.
We could do it. It only takes 5 to 7 months.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
I had a customer in the store this summer that walked. She was probably in her 70s. retired post office worker. She started in Georgia, and she made it she was in New Hampshire, and she started having problems with one of her ankles, so she had to quit. She made it all that ways.
Yep.
I'm like, that's very impressive.
Yeah. I did a Spartan run that took 3 hours or 3 hours. I don't remember. That was good.
You're like, I'm all set. I don't want to do any more of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leads me then to a little bit more like parenting sons, like going through what you did, especially with me. That's really the one that I know the best.
And the others, yeah. Well,
Well, everybody
you
has
weren't
their
isolated.
Stuff. Yeah. How do you exemplify strength by letting go? That seems like a complete dichotomy for me.
Good question. It's a little bit like the eagle pushing the, what do they call their little ones? Eaglets?
Sure. Fact check.
Fletchings.
Baby
Fletchlings.
eagle name.
Chicks. Yeah.
Fledgling.
Chick,
Eaglet.
okay.
Hey, you were right.
Eaglet. Hey, all right.
right.
So it's a little bit like that where, they're kind of standing on the edge of the nest, and probably the mother pushes them. See, it's all the mother.
Yeah.
No, I think I didn't really experience an awful lot of that when I was younger. Like when I was leaving home, I lived at home pretty much till I got married. So there wasn't any big adventure outside of my whatever I did during the day. But for me to see that they were ready to go, that they were ready to spread their wings, so to speak, and just kind of find their way, and knowing that I felt like I had a very good relationship with my sons, and that we would be okay, regardless of what happened. If they messed up, if something went wrong, if something didn't work out, I knew we would be able to work through it. And I think that's a key, is to have that relationship where you have confidence in them. I mean, I raised strong young men, and they were ready to be on their own, especially two of them, Tyler and Calder. They couldn't wait to get out and find out things. And
Yep.
Tyson and Brock were more similar, that they loved being home. Like when they would leave, like Tyson went to college and Brock went to college in Connecticut, they would come home and just loved being home, and the others loved being home too, but it's just like they had a lot of other things to do. For me, it was the confidence that I had in knowing that our relationship was at a point where we would make it through whatever come. I loved having the boys around, so it was hard for me to release them. But I think there has to come a point in time where, as a father, you take your hands off and you allow them to figure out their life's direction. You don't just throw them out there without anything, because if the relationship is in place, they'll come back. They'll ask for advice. They'll want to have communication back and forth. And there's a respect there. I had respect for them. They had respect for me. And so there was just I think a real confidence in me that even if one of them did something that I thought this is not going to turn out real well, to be able to let that go. And there were times where I had to say, okay, God, I can't step in here, and you're big enough to take care of this. And I had to release it and let it go. And that was hard. I mean, because, I would want to fix it. I would want to spare them if that was the case. but knowing that the foundation that Dawn and I had tried to place in their life, that emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, that they had a good foundation in their life and that it was going to be okay. And so I think that's, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I guess it was the confidence in seeing where you guys were at.
Relationship, like number one, that they have a place to come back to.
For sure.
Yeah. So that, you know, when they jump out of the nest, you have to allow them to do that. So that in building the relationship until that point.
Yeah.
Till that time
and you
comes.
do, because if you don't, what are you going to have? You're going to have a 40-year-old living in your basement that can't function. Mm-hmm. And, you know, nobody wants that for their children.
Yeah, so you got to be like whispering in their ear, like, hey, what do you want to do with your life? Hey, at some point you're going to have to leave here. All the while you're like, you're dreading the day.
Yes, for sure.
But it is your duty to put that in their mind that someday they have to go out on their own and that you bless it. Almost.
Yeah, because if they don't have their own adventure, if they don't have their own thing to pursue, they have no meaning in life.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson said it perfect when he was talking about the relationship between parents and their children and letting them out to go to the horribleness of the world and confront the terrors of the world, the hardships of the world. Yeah. And he said, like, yeah, well, you go out there, you know, it's dangerous, but it's more dangerous if you stay here with me, because out there you might get hurt, but here you lose your soul. Like, you don't have any. Yeah. That's so profound.
It is very profound.
Because you need that. Yep. You need that encouragement. You need that push. Yeah, it's dangerous out there, but it's more dangerous here.
And that's a good way to put it. And that's why, you know, when you release them and let them go, there's got to be faith on your part, you know, as the dad. I would encourage anybody that, you know, happens to be listening to this that has questions along this line. This book that we talked about is a really good book, and I had gotten it a number of years ago when I was pastoring to do a men's thing at church.
This is the
Wild at Heart by John Eldridge.
Wild at Heart, yeah.
There's videos. You can go online, or you can go in the app store, and there's an app, just a Wild at Heart app, and it's got a lot of little short talks. It's got actually some series of people that he's interviewed and men that have failed but have turned it around and become, you know, successful in life. It's very encouraging because it talks about this whole thing about finding your soul, the soul of a man, and pursuing that. Mm-hmm. It's a really good tool. I'm
gonna have to download it.
Yeah,
as fast as I'm going through that book, man. I'm not a reader, and I'm like blowing through that book. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. It's so well written. Such good stuff in there. Is there a point of modeling competence for your children to then see that relationship and even see you struggle, see you do hard things, see you working hard with your hands, or going through some kind of adversity? They're always watching. Like, the children are always watching how much that impacts them.
They're involved in it in kind of a surreal way. They're involved, you know, they're involved in it. The example is a very important thing. I mean, I had a great example. My dad was an amazing example for me, and I'm sure my grandparents, you know, my grandfathers and my father-in-law, and just men that have been good examples for me. My thing to be an example to my children is I wanted to, first and foremost, I wanted them to know that I love their mother. Very, very important. That if you want your children to grow up, whether it's boys or girls, to love their spouse, then they need to be able to see that modeled in their home. Hugely important. So that example. The other example I think is very important is that, you guys saw me when I messed up, and I'd have to come and apologize. I'd have to say, I blew it. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. I shouldn't have responded that way, and just be humble and willing to, to call a spade, and move forward from there and correct that. I haven't always been a very humble person, but the importance of that is really, really huge. The example of being diligent and carrying through with things that you say, if you tell them a disciplinary thing, follow through with it.
If you tell them you're going to do something for them,
if you're gonna build them a tree house, build them a tree house. Let's just be honorable and do what we are expected to do from them, because I mean, the disappointment that could create in a young mind is huge. And, they'll be in therapy later, maybe, or something, but I think those are some of the main things, is, and of course, the example of godly principles and moral values and standards are also very, very important. Yeah.
I'm just writing down some notes from what you're saying. Good stuff here.
I told the boys I'd get their bikes down yesterday evening, or before I went to work in the morning. Something, I don't know. And then later in the evening, as I'm driving home, I'm like, ugh,
I don't want to go
7 o'clock, or 8 o'clock, whatever. I want to get home, park the truck, get inside, sit on the couch and do nothing. I do not. It's a dumb thing. The attic is 2 steps up, get the bikes down, you're done. But it was the last thing in the world that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But man, that is a little thing. Getting the bike. The point is that getting the bikes down is not a huge promise, but it is to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something as simple as I will get your bikes down today.
Yep.
Is you're promising them the world. And you
Yeah,
have to
for
follow.
sure.
So just to place some importance on what that actually looks like. It's even the little things that matter. You have to follow through on every teeny thing that you say, because it means everything to them.
Yeah, and it'll come back. Their little minds compute some of this stuff, and I'm sure that there's been times where I've had to go back and say, I said we'd do this and we didn't, but let's do it now.
Yeah.
There's always time.
Yeah. And that teaches them too, the power of commitment and how important it is.
Yeah.
And say what you mean and mean what you say. And it's a very important principle to instill in a young man.
Yeah, and I think the part about loving your spouse and showing that, and let your children see that part of your relationship. I'm sure there's homes where they see the fighting that's going on, but in our home, we were pretty affectionate people. And to this day, I mean, one of my favorite things is when the grandkids come in the house and they're like, Grandpa, and they run over and they give you a big hug. That's because they're seeing that home as well.
Yeah.
So it's a real blessing.
Little sponges.
Little smudges.
Yeah. Yeah. We're big huggers. You guys are too, right? Yeah. I hug and kiss my kids multiple times a day.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Very affectionate.
I just like it
with my kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if every household is like that, but I couldn't imagine it any other way. Yeah. That physical contact is so, it's gotta be, there's some brain chemistry there with the kids that I think there is a huge benefit, to the physical aspect of your relationship with your kids. And even especially fathers, I think a lot of times fathers can be, I don't know if fathers think that they shouldn't be. Even if I thought that, I wouldn't have the will to stop myself, because I personally just love hugging and kissing my kids.
Yeah.
But I bet that there is huge benefit to that from fathers specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably some kind of chemical thing that happens in their brain, that right side of the brain.
Gotta be. Yeah.
And there's definitely a part of it too that how you're raised is a huge influence on how you parent. That is definitely the truth.
Yeah.
Especially in homes that are torn by abuse. It's almost never that the abuser wasn't abused themselves or didn't see abuse in their own family, didn't see abuse in their parents' marital, relationship.
And how that affects them for years and years and years to come,
You're having to break a generational curse then at that point.
Yeah.
And I like what you said before about all the men around you who were displaying a lot of these healthy sides of masculinity that nobody really talks about. And maybe that's part of being macho and quote unquote masculine, is that you don't really discuss these things too much, but how valuable it is for young fathers and young men and young women, by the way, who are looking for a partner that they would like these qualities to be modeled after. What a great thing to literally change the lives of, you're talking dozens and dozens of people by the time your grandkids and then their generations. And, it could be such a lasting impact that might be one of the more meaningful things you ever do. Like pick up that cross every day and bear that and play it out and let people see what it looks like, not out of your own, pride, but out of godly principles, out of healthy principles. That's really good.
Yeah. One mission field, one way of restoring the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
One generation at a time.
Yeah.
One family tree at a time.
Yeah. And, and that's the thing is, we often think about, what can we do out there? What can we do out there? Well, Penn always used to say, if it doesn't work at home, don't export it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to that statement.
Yeah. Or what is, to bring him up again, Jordan Peterson, he says, don't go out and try to fix the world if your bedroom's not in order. Yeah. Very well said. Because I think a lot of the popular perspective on that would be, you don't need to have your life in order to affect change in the world, which is true technically, I guess. But the more put together you are, the more impact you can have, especially in the near term. That's the truth.
Going back to a little bit of what I said about being willing to admit when I make a mistake, there's something that I think kind of goes against the grain of a man, is like, we're not supposed to make mistakes. We're not supposed to admit that we failed somewhere. And one of the things in this book, Wild at Heart, there's several sections that talk about the wound that we might be carrying, and how do we get healing from that, or how do we overcome some of those things. And again, just a great part of the book to learn how to overcome those kinds of things. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm probably going to link that book or something in the bottom
be a good idea
for anybody that can hear it. I just want to kind of paint a picture of what you've been talking about as far as what I would consider healthy masculinity to look like, and just some qualities that people can kind of strive toward. Nobody's perfect. We're all going to fail. It's not going to be a perfect picture at the end.
I heard Billy Graham say that today. Well, I didn't hear him say it. I heard him
recording.
What?
What did he say?
That it's okay not to be perfect.
Right. Someday
we'll be perfected, but not here, not now.
And not by your own doing.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. So some of those qualities would be exhibiting a strong marital relationship so that your kids can see it and model after it. Diligence to be consistent. Honesty, loving your kids, loving your spouse, loving others. Honorable, steadfast, persevering, humble. Did I say that already? Committed to what you say you're going to do and do it, and then following through on promises.
Yeah.
I guess it seems that would be a more encompassing vision of masculinity to me.
Let's rewrite it. Put it in Webster's.
Yeah. I really appreciate a lot of your outlooks on these things. I think that it seems like generations evolve in perspective. And as I'm looking back through the years, maybe to that more macho masculine, culture preceding us, we can focus on some of these other things that have huge benefits that were maybe neglected by the the group of masculine men that we would have considered.
Which they
that
probably
was
had to
missed.
have at that time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And that is a great point too, because just like you can't shield your kids from the world, you shouldn't throw your shield away from protecting your family and from others. Yeah. And the way you do that is by learning, by talking to people, by your personal development, personal strength, personal skill sets, personal competence, and all of those things move then down to generations, and they'll see that. Wildly important, because when something happens, when the world maybe reverts by some means to that more aggressive, the more less insulated type of world which we live in, and a lot of parts of the world aren't in that,
for sure,
then you have the capabilities to then function properly instead of fall back.
That sums it up pretty good.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate you coming and talking to us about this. Like I said, with that conversation that happened in Florida, I was like, man, I really wish we would have this kind of on the record. And just not only for me, but for my children. And it also needs to be said that this kind of conversation isn't just for men.
Absolutely.
For women raising men or future men or, raising boys, for women looking for maybe a healthy masculine man, what that looks like. It might be qualities to look for, and just kind of pass down generation to generation how we can make these ideas more concrete.
Yeah, I need to give a lot of credit to Dawn. She spent a lot more time with our children than I did. We homeschooled most of them, most of the way through. And so she had, huge influence as well, and very godly woman, and just did an amazing job.
Yeah, we live in we can maybe have a good way to end this, but like we live in a very special time. Like we live in a time that's things are not very hard for us, and back in the day, going back to that old school masculinity, not good times. Times were hard all the time. Tough. For decades.
You had to match the
exactly
the age.
The phenotypical display of masculinity was forced in one direction, and that was the display of masculinity that was required. And it left less time for things that we talked about today. We weren't there, but I think that's a pretty good hypothesis. You can go back and study that and see if it's true, but I think that's a good assumption to make right now. Well, we live in a very valuable time right now where hardship is not very common. And we have precious time now to invest all of those qualities that you've brought to us today in our kids while we can. And this is a very valuable time, and don't squander it. We don't have to display our masculinity in those ways. We can display masculinity in a
great way to say it.
Very important way.
Yeah.
Well, with the time that we have, use it. Yeah.
Very well said.
Yeah.
I heard a quote too the other day that said, the conversation was about exactly what we're talking about. And he was basically saying, men, I'm going to butcher it, but the virtue of competence is not that you don't know how to use the sword, but that you know how to use it and keep it sheathed. And those are the kinds of people that will inherit the earth, which is in mixed martial arts or in anything like that. That's like a tenet. That's like a tenet is to bring yourself up to the skill and then be able to reserve that ability unless needed. Yeah. And that is a part of masculinity that kind of gets tampered down because it's associated with violence. It's associated with aggression, tyranny. And instead it's like, no, actually those are the people who are going to fight those things.
Good.
Yeah. Really good. Anyway, Dad, thanks so much. Yeah, appreciate you coming in, especially short notice.
Yeah.
This will not be the last time, so everybody can just hang on to that. Before we go, what's your next adventure?
Oh boy!
Besides hiking the Appalachian, we got to figure out how long.
My next adventure is I don't know if it's an adventure or not, but I would like to get I don't know. I'd like to get some things sewn up around the house. I guess that's an adventure always.
Always. Yeah.
Just say skydiving or something.
Skydiving, you don't want to do that. Bungee jumping, it's not not for me. I don't know. We Dawn and I were just talking a couple nights ago about going to Switzerland, like a train, kind of a train thing, through the mountains and through Switzerland, and visiting some of the kind of the motherland, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, we're heritage.
Yeah.
Heritage
So, I mean, that could be on the docket in the next few years. That would be a pretty major thing. But
Sounds like a blast.
And I'm
Yeah.
going. I'm definitely
You're coming along?
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
Well, our deck broke the other day from all the snow that was on it, and I'm like, I said to Dawn, I said, well, there goes Switzerland, and Tyler came and fixed it right away. But I made the joke. I said, well, maybe what we can do is we can get those goggles, those reality things.
Yeah, virtual reality.
Virtual reality, sit on our back deck and put Switzerland on those.
Be a lot
Pretend
cheaper.
We're going through.
Getting to the
the
point where that's
mountains.
pretty much going to be like
Yeah, that's going to be
just
the
as good as the
That'd
real
be the
thing.
new way to travel.
Yeah, what a crazy time.
Yeah.
Well, then it sounds like we need to do some hiking then if you're going to be
I need to get ready to
hiking through
hike
the Alps.
too.
yeah, hiking through the big boy Alps.
I was there. Swiss Alps, yeah.
You
Yeah,
were there.
Swiss Alps.
You been there?
No, I was too
Oh, you
young
were
to
in
remember any of
Germany,
that.
though.
Yeah. The tail end of it, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, walking through castles and stuff. But no, nothing crazy
good.
like that.
So nothing real major.
Would you enjoy this is a sidebar before we go.
Yep.
Would you enjoy hiking? Like getting into hiking?
I would, yeah.
Sorry.
I would. I mean, I think I've never done anything major with that. We hiked up, was it Bald Mountain maybe a couple times, which is,
That's no joke. That's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Just
What is
by the
it?
time
What
you
is
get
it?
to
The
the top.
47 peaks in the
yeah,
Adirondacks?
46.
46 peaks.
yeah.
Okay. Why don't we do that?
Let's do one.
I'm down.
Okay.
Nick, can we get you a public? Can we get a public?
I got a B in backpacking class in college. That's how bad I am at it.
No way, that's a real
class.
You
thing.
had to take hiking first and then backpacking, and I got a B in backpacking. I didn't ask for it, but I just. She must have known like this guy hates it.
He hates
That
hiking.
sounds like
Lack of
college
enthusiasm.
Right there, yeah.
B.
The business major in business school needs a backpack.
It was like a 1-day class for full credit, like 3 credit. That's why I did it, and I got a B.
Okay, in that case, I would do it as well. Hey,
Anyway.
I would love to do that. I'd love to do some hiking.
Good exercise,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Thanks for your insight. Thanks for sitting down and talking to us. This is important stuff.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And I guess to anybody who's listening, find your adventure
Go for it.
and go for it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. We'll see you next time then. That's it.
Bye.
See ya.